The key in the LCK was a sound I was accustomed to hearing, and it used to make me happy. Now, it was simply another reminder of the hole that had taken over our house. It was Thursday night, and as planned, Clara had returned from her girls' night out as well, so she claimed to have strutted in a vision of carefully curated confidence. Her new dress, which was bright red and seemed to scream for attention, was a bold choice and a departure from her usual muted tones. She pirouetted in the hallway in a practice move meant to catch my attention, and even though I was sitting in the living room acting like I was reading, I saw everything: the way the fabric hugged her curves, the glint of her new jewelry, the faint smirk that played on her lips. It was all a masterfully planned performance. Naturally, I had noticed the changes, the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the way her eyes glazed over when I tried to talk about my day, because it wasn't like I was born yesterday. I also knew that she wasn't going out with friends, and this new dress was evidence of her sin, flaunted in a color that symbolized her lack of concern for the man she had vowed to be faithful to. I made myself look back at the book in my hands while pretending to be engrossed for weeks. Collecting proof and assembling the pieces of her deceit. Her phone records showed me the times she left the house, claiming to be going to the grocery store. I had followed her to the fancy hotel where she had met the sleeve guy, a real estate developer named Marcus, who had a hairline so long gone that it made him look like a cartoon villain. I had been methodical and patient, like a coiled spring waiting for the right moment to strike, and she floated into the living room with her perfume. She purred and leaned down to kiss me on the cheek, her lips cool and artificial like a plastic mask. She had warned me to play the part of a loving wife. "Hey honey," I replied, my voice carefully neutral, and I made sure not to look at her because this was the beginning of the end. I excused myself and went into the bathroom as part of her plan because she had assumed my heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady as I approached the mirror, which was clean and shining, reflecting my distorted image in a moment. It wouldn't be so clean on the surface right above where she would look at herself, so I WR with the non-permanent marker. One thing I am aware of regarding Marcus: I wanted to see her expression and witness the understanding, so I retreated and let the marker fall to the ground with a gentle thump. Dawn in her eyes, the mask of fabricated innocence fall to pieces. I walked back to the living room trying to act as casual as possible. I sat on the edge of the sofa and pretended to look at a sporting event on TV, a game I couldn't care less about. She gave me a weird look and then turned to the bathroom. She saw the writing on the mirror when I heard her gasp. The sound was like a shard of glass against a chalkboard, sharp and unsettling. I watched her from the corner of my eye, her face, usually so carefully composed, crumpled, her eyes widening in a mix of fear and surprise. I could hear her trembling breath. She stared at the mirror as if the words were a venomous snake about to strike. Slowly she turned and came back into the living room. "What is this?" she asked, her voice a shaky whisper. "What does it look like?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "Just some writing on the mirror, is it not?" She tried to maintain her composure, but the cracks were already showing. "You're being ridiculous," she said. "Who is Marcus?" She insisted, trying a bold-faced lie. I simply smiled, the expression cold and hard. "I'd say ask him, but he's currently getting a nice view of the pavement from my fist." I'd been following Marcus too. I had cornered him in the hotel lobby about 30 minutes before I had seen Clara arrive. The initial conversation was calm, but I hadn't been able to keep my anger in check. The guy was arrogant and cocky, and I'd made sure he paid for it. His suit was ruined, his face was swollen, and I was satisfied with the message I'd conveyed. It wouldn't be the last message either. Her face paled even further. "What did you do?" she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. I stood up, my shadow engulfing her. "Let's just say that Marcus won't be answering any more of your late-night phone calls. He's otherwise occupied with the realization he's been messing with the wrong man." She recoiled as if I had struck her. "You can't do this, you can't," she stammered, her voice laced with panic. "Oh, but I can, Clara, and I will." I took out my phone and showed her the pictures, the videos I'd captured of her and Marcus. The flashing lights of the hotel bars illuminated her face. Her hand in his, laughter, which had grown so alien to me, had been recording all of our recent chats, and I was ready for the falsehoods and denials as well. "You made your decision, you destroyed our vows, our marriage, all we built together, and all for what? A cheap thrill with a pitiful excuse for a guy." She looked at the pictures, her face twisted in horror, and she stammered, "There's nothing to explain. I truly believed that your taste was superior." When I played the tape of her chat with Marcus a few weeks ago, she cried out and covered her ears as she laughed about me making fun of my old car in private and the way I handled every part of my life, which was also her own. I threw a little manila envelope onto the coffee table, and when the sound thudded into the quiet, she looked from me to the envelope, her chest heaving with sobbing. "Those are the divorce papers. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You can move out by the weekend. I want you out by the weekend." I remained unimpressed and refused to show her any pity as she started to cry in a pitiful, pleading voice. "Please, I'm so sorry, please forgive me." My response was a chilly silence. This time, forgiving wasn't an option, so I pivoted and entered the guest room, closing the door after myself. Farah cried as she followed me, but I ignored them and decided to give her the weekend off, which was more than she deserved. The following few days were a haze of packing and hushed arguments, none of which I participated in. Farah moved through the house like a ghost, her once vibrant crimson dress now a pitiful crumpled after a weekend of silent, tense activity. I watched on Sunday night as she backed the U-Haul out of the driveway. She paused before driving away, staring at me, but I never acknowledged her. She would cry and try to touch me in the corner of our bedroom, but I had erased every last trace of her from my heart. Her entire manner was a disaster, her eyes were red and puffy, and her makeup was all over the place. This was very different from how she had been when I had first met her. I stood on the porch with my arms crossed, watching as the car drove away, taking with it her lies, her betrayal, and everything that had been. It was eerily quiet now, but for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I wasn't happy just yet, but at least I was free from the web of lies she had spun around us. I walked into the bathroom, the words on the mirror still visible, and grinned, thinking, this was my home again, mine, and mine alone. I would have it clean, my heart clean, and my life will be mine. This was my new life, a clean slate, and the future was mine.